Hi, I'm Jill Finley, and we're here for week 2 of the Sewing Bee Sew Along, and I'm so glad that you've joined me. If you weren't here last week, you can go back and watch those videos anytime. They'll always be posted there on my YouTube channel, so you can catch up. Last week, I showed you how to cut out all your pieces, and today I've got a few. I didn't bring all of them, but I've got a few of the pieces set here to kind of show you how I choose my fabrics for each individual block. Today, we are going to be making block Star A block, which is on page 4 of your pattern, here at the top, Star A, and you're going to make 9 of these blocks. At the heading of each block, it tells you what you will need for each block. So this one says that you're going to need, of the white, you need the 3.5 by 2 inch rectangles. We've got those, and the 2-inch squares in white. So that's all you need from that big pile of whites that you cut. But then from your colored fabrics, your print fabrics, you need various prints. And I used all of my selection at once because I wanted to be able to have a lot of variety so that my quilt turned out to be really scrappy. Now, the placement of the fabrics is not given to you in the pattern because this is just a random scrappy quilt. So you're just going to grab your pieces and put them together into blocks. You can choose, you can be a little bit more specific if you want to be, or you can be really random and scrappy. So for instance, I'm going today, it says that I need one 3.5 inch square for each block, so I'm going to use that one. And then it needs a set of 4, so you need at least 4 of one color to be the inside triangles. And then you need the points of your outside block, and I'm going to use this print. So these are the ones that I've chosen for one block. And let me just pick a few others so that you can see it doesn't really matter what you choose. For example, I might use this block and put some of these black squares with it. You need 4, and then you need 8 for your outside. How about this one? That's cute, for your outside points. So there's another block selection. Let's do this one. On this one, let's see, let's use some of these, 4 of those, and then the outside points. What about, oh, let's use the black on the inside. That'd be cute, because there's a little black bee there. And then the outside points, maybe I'll use, you need 8 for the outside points. So there's another selection. And let's do one more. What if I were to do this black print for the center? I could do almost anything with that, but I think this would be really cute. And then add some outside points. So this block is going to be black with red. And that's another. So it really doesn't matter which you choose, but you're going to use 4 of the inside points and 8, so you have to have matching squares to make the points of your star. The 4 on the inside are your triangles that are in your square and a square block, and then the outside squares will be the points of your star. So we're going to start by making that square and a square, okay? And these are the ones that I picked to use for the star we're making today. So refer back to your pattern on page 3. If you're not familiar with making a square and a square block, it's right here at the top. Whoops, I'm sorry, it's right here at the bottom, square in the square. Okay, and here's the instructions to do it. And I'm going to walk you through that. Many of you are probably familiar with that. It's an easy concept, so you have no problem at all. But you start by marking a line on the wrong side of each of your 4 squares that are going to be your inside triangles. And then place your small square, your 2-inch square, on your large 3.5 inch square with the edges lined up. And then you're going to sew along that line. Make sure you don't place your square so that the line goes into the square. You want the line to go across the square. Okay? And this line is drawn exactly from point to point, and I'm going to sew just a little bit inside that line, just toward the corner, just right here next to the line. So I'll take it to my machine, and let's just sew right along that, close to that line there. Okay, and then I would turn it around and add my next square that's opposite, on the opposite corner, and sew on that one as well. But I'm going to now trim this. I trim this corner off so that my square has a nice seam allowance, and then I'll take it to my ironing board. Let's set that out of the way here. First of all, I press it once to set that seam down in nice and tight, and then I'll just open it up with my iron. Press it right like that. Okay. Now I've got the first triangle on, and I've got one here that I've already added 2 triangles, and I'm ready. I've already sewn the third one. I'm going to sew one more triangle on the opposite corner to finish my square in a square for the center of this quilt block. Okay, at this point you can use a rotary cutter or you can use your scissors to just trim those off so that you have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. When I'm doing these, if I've got all of my pieces, the different stars figured out, I usually will make one first to make sure I know how to do the method, and then I will take them and chain them through. So I would have one square, adding a corner triangle on it, next to another square that is adding a corner triangle, this guy is, and feed those through my machine like that. Chain that one, and do the whole thing. Then go the other side and chain all of those through, and that way it's a little bit more efficient. Okay, now that I've got, you notice that I pressed those first seam allowances out. So I pressed those first seam allowances for the first 2 triangles toward the triangles. The second 2 I'm going to press inward toward. First of all, I'm going to set those seams, but I'm going to press this toward the center of the block, so toward the big square. And I'll usually give it a shot of steam there. Ooh, it's hot. Okay. All right, there's my square in a square. Now this square should be 3.5 inches square, so I'm just going to check it roughly on my mat. Perfect, 3.5 inches square. Now that's ready, and I'm going to set this aside to do the next element. And the next element in our pattern is the flying geese units, and they're right there. Going back to the basics page on page 3, flying geese are right here, and it's the same technique where we are sewing across the corner on a drawn line so that we're perfectly in the middle of that square. Now, one thing I didn't mention, I wrote on my pattern, it's not written on your pattern, which way I want to press those seams. So down here on the square in the square block, I pressed the first 2 that I sewed on out. I pressed those toward the triangles. And the second 2 that I sewed on, I pressed in toward the square. And that just makes it easier to piece together. If you didn't do it that way, it doesn't really matter, don't panic. It just helps it to go together a little bit easier. And then on this flying geese unit, I am going to press both of my triangles out, okay? And I'll show you why in a minute. So for the flying geese unit, we need a 3.5 by 2 inch square, rectangle, sorry. And then our corner points, these are the corner points I've got left. And I'm going to place one here and sew that on. Okay, and you can chain these together as well, but it is important, you're going to need 4 flying geese units, so go ahead and chain those together and then trim your seam allowance. And on these, it's important to press your first one open before you add the second one. So press that little triangle open, and then we're ready to add the next one. And I'll place this right here and sew on across the corner on the drawn line. Okay, And then I'm going to trim this for a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Set this aside, and then I press this one open as well. Set the seam first, press that open. And this flying geese unit, let me press this from this side a little bit, should measure 3.5 by 2 when it's finished. And I'm just going to check that. 3.5, and it's nice and square by 2. Okay, now I've made the rest, so we want to have 4 of these flying geese units to go on our square and a square. Here's our square and a square. So we'll start by putting first 2 on opposite sides. Okay, so let's take this one, and I'm just going to place it there with the base of my triangle there. And I don't usually pin. It's another step that I don't feel like I need. If you're a pinner, go ahead and pin. That's great. But the reason that I press this seam allowance open, I mean towards these triangles out here on the flying geese, is so that when I'm stitching, I can see right where those the point of that triangle is, and stitch right across those seam lines where they cross, and that will make me preserve the points on these. I've also, remember we pressed this little square and a square block with some of them in and some of the seams out? Well, if your piece isn't fitting so that it's lined up, you can turn it to another edge so that you've got it so that it nests together. Now, one of my edges is going to nest nicely together because I've got this seam going this way, this one going this way. This seam is going to sit on top of that seam. I only need to nest one to make sure I'm in the right place. Okay? And then sometimes I'll just kind of check it. I'll hold it right there, open it up. Oh yeah, that looks like it's good. And then I'm just going to stitch. Okay, here we go. I'm going to pull on that to make sure those seams are nested tightly together. Okay, let's see how we did. Oh, perfect. Perfect, perfect. So I'm going to press this. I think I'll press this one in, and then we'll press the opposite side the same direction. A little bit of steam. Oh, I can't put that iron up because it turns off. Okay, I'm ready to add the one on the opposite side. I'm going to nest those seams right together and make sure my points meet. Perfect. And then okay, that looks great. Let's see if the iron stayed hot this time. Okay. You can put a clapper on it now if you want until it cools off to get those to lay flat. But if you have extra bulk, and you will, because you've got a lot of seams coming together right here at these points, don't worry about it, because that's going to get lost in your batting. Once you layer your quilt top with your batting and backing, you'll never even notice that. It'll get lost in the batting. All right, now the next 2 flying geese units will go on these sides, but we need to add the corner triangles. Corner squares, I'm sorry, corner squares. So a square of 2-inch white goes on the end of each of these flying geese. So I'm going to sew those together. We'll chain those together. And grab your next one. And you can see that once you get one block made, then you can make all 8 of the remaining blocks, at the same time by chaining each process together as you go. Makes it a little easier and more efficient, and it's fun to do. These pieces are little, and I don't want you to be intimidated by it. It's just the same as sewing with big pieces, except you have less room where you're going to goof up. So it's going to be great. Oh, and I was going to mention a little bit about the directional fabrics. I talked a tiny bit about it in the intro, but I don't think I got my point across. So many of these fabrics in this collection are directional. This one is, this one is, this one is. The word one not so much because it goes both directions, but I don't want you to worry about which direction they're facing, because these pieces are so small, you're not going to notice once it's pieced in the quilt. I never thought about it, and nobody has ever complained, hey, those are going the wrong direction. So it adds to the charm of the quilt because it's going to be scrappy and have all those different directions of prints going. So now I'm going to press these. Let's see, I pressed the first two flying geese in towards the center block. So my seam is going in. So for these, I'm going to press this seam out so that those will nest nicely together and it'll be easy to put them on. Whenever we can avoid extra bulk, it's nice to do, but sometimes it's just impossible to get everything to nest together because there's so many seams coming together. So now you can see, let me pull this back over here. This will go there, and this will go there, and I'm going to just nest those seams nice and tight together because this is where you want it to meet. And when I don't pin, I sew as far as I need to get to the first joint, and then I'm going to make sure that this is in the right place too, this center. So I'm just going to sew to that first seam so that I know that those are together, and then I'm going to check and make sure that my second seam is going to meet right in the middle. And I'll sew that far, and then I'll check my next seam, which is this outside one, and go that far. Let's see how we did. Oh, pretty darn good. Okay, so we have the points meet right here, and this looks great, and that looks great. And you can press this seam any way you want. I'm going to press it open. I mean open, or toward the outside is what I mean. Just open that up. Okay, and now I'm ready to add the last section, and it goes right there. Now, if you're having trouble getting these center points to match, here's something that I sometimes do. I'll put a pin right in the center of this point where I want this to meet. Okay, right there. And then I'm going to join that right in the center of this point, right there. Now, if you were to bend your pin and put it in like this, you can distort that bottom fabric. So leave your pin just upright. So leave my pin just upright, and then take another pin and pin on the side of it, and then on this side. We'll go ahead and do this one this way. And then on this side, I'm going to pin on this side. Then I can remove this original point pin, and that's going to hold that in place where it needs to be. I've got to make sure that I've got this seam up here with the corner square nested nicely with the rest of the block. And I remove the pins as I come to them so I don't sew over them, but you can if you want, if you like to live dangerously. I don't want to have to change my needle. It's a little stuck there. There we go. We'll see how I did with pinning because I don't usually do that. Oh, pretty good, pretty good. I'm happy with that. Okay, press this. See how quick and easy that was? My iron turned off a minute, so let's wait for that to kind of dry. And you can see that my block's a little bit, oh, it looks great, but it's a little bit uneven on the outside edge, so I'm going to take my 6-inch square-up ruler and just test it out. Oh, there's a few places where I could trim. I hid my rotary cutter. So I'm going to trim off that and that. And one last. Okay. Oh, perfect block. Okay, here's the block, all finished. Block A. Perfect points. They meet in the centers. So we have really nice definition. And you can see that I'm going to have a 1/4-inch seam allowance here on the edges so that when I piece these blocks together in the quilt, I won't cut off my points. So that's block A, and you're going to complete 9, is it 9 total? I believe it's 9 total, so 8 more. You're making 9 blocks. Get those done this week and come back next week and we'll do block B. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.